Welcome to Module 3 of the course, Plus Inclusive Education from Reflection to Action. In this module, we will focus on dimensions for an inclusive school, resources for an inclusive ecosystem, some of which, such as universal design for learning, will be covered quite thoroughly, and a strategic partnership, school, community, families. The objectives of this module are knowing ways to develop quality inclusive education for all learners, identify ways to create an inclusive classroom, adjust pedagogical-didactic practices that promote the potential of all students. As we have seen in the previous modules, inclusion is interested in accepting diversity, benefiting all pupils, not just the excluded, admitting children who may feel excluded, promoting equal access to education or taking some measures for certain groups of children without excluding them. It should also be noted that inclusion is not interested in reforming special education, but reforming both the formal and non-formal education system, to respond only to diversity, but to improve the quality of education for all, create special schools, but rather provide additional support for pupils in the mainstream education system, solving only the problems of children with a disability condition, solving one child's problems at the expense of another child. A move towards inclusive education means seriously trying to promote quality in the classroom, which is why we have devoted a whole module to the topic of inclusive school. This requires some changes in the school, such as 1. Focus on flexibility, both structurally and in terms of content, to provide opportunities for a variety of working and learning methods so that no student is left out. 2. Looking at differences as learning opportunities. It is important to explain that putting the learner at the center does not mean that learners need to be taught separately in order to learn. And finally, perhaps the most important aspect that underpins this paradigm shift to an inclusive school. 3. Quality in education has to be considered much more than the academic results of students. Diversity and flexibility are seen as important factors for the personal development and growth of all students. For those who don't see these permissions for the first time and are wondering, but how to do it, let's go in parts. 1. Prioritizing pupils' individual needs, interests, and abilities. School for All is a coherent but differentiated place of learning. UNESCO 2005. 2. In the organization of the classroom, individual adaptations can be made. In addition, students can support each other according to their abilities and areas of strength. Also, 3. Defining strategies to overcome or eliminate barriers for the full participation of individuals. As we saw in Module 1, we encountered some obstacles on this path, such as existing values and attitudes, lack of understanding, lack of necessary knowledge, limited resources, and inadequate organization. But there is no inclusion if there is no change in the school as we know it today. And, as Professor David Rodrigues would say, an inclusive school is one that is on the move. And it is in this continuous process of developing learning and participation of all students that inclusion happens in practice. According to the Index for Inclusion, a document produced for schools in the UK and adopted by many other countries as a reference, there are 3 dimensions that lead the school towards inclusive education. These are 1. The creation of an inclusive culture, which includes the construction of the sense of community, establishing inclusive values. 2. The implementation of inclusive policies resulting from developing a school for all, organizing support for diversity. 3. Promotion of inclusive practices, which consist of organizing learning, mobilizing resources. Each of these dimensions is addressed below. Creating inclusive cultures is nothing more than creating safe, welcoming, collaborative, stimulating communities where everyone is valued. Teachers, parents, communities, school authorities, curriculum advisors, teacher training colleges, and educational entrepreneurs are some of the actors who can act as valuable resources in supporting inclusion. Some of them, teachers, parents, and communities, are much more than a valuable resource. They are the key elements to support all aspects of the inclusion process. Creating a sense of community with a view to creating an inclusive culture is no more than bringing all these actors together and enabling them to cooperate with each other. Furthermore, the school should be a model of democratic citizenship, where everyone is welcome and respected. A school where staff and management work together. Inclusion is mainly seen as putting inclusive values into practice. It is a commitment to certain values that explain the desire to overcome exclusion and promote participation. All values are necessary for inclusive educational development, but, according to Index for Inclusion, 5. Equality, participation, community, respect for diversity, and sustainability are the ones that can contribute most to the establishment of inclusive structures, procedures, and activities in schools. This transition of values must be nurtured by everyday life. Being clear about the relationship between values and actions is the most practical step we can take in education. It leads us to know what to do next and to understand the actions of others. In schools, this means linking values to the details of curricula, teaching and learning activities, interactions in teachers' rooms and playgrounds, and relationships between all children and adults, as well as families and community bodies. Establishing inclusive values involves developing inclusive values that are shared, encouraging respect for all human rights, encouraging respect for the integrity of planet Earth, understanding inclusion as the widening of participation for all, having high expectations for all children, valuing all children equally, combating all forms of discrimination, promoting non-violent interactions and problem-solving, encouraging children and adults to feel good about themselves, and contributing to the health of children and adults. Moving on to the second dimension of EI, it is necessary that inclusion is the fundamental philosophy and that this is dictated by inclusive policies. When we talk about developing a school for all, it is important to clarify that education for all does not automatically imply inclusion. Inclusion itself focuses on reforming schools and ensuring that all children receive a quality and appropriate education within those schools. The fundamental social transformation, which is the basis for a change at school, requires self-training. The curriculum can also be a tool to foster tolerance and promote human rights. This knowledge can be a powerful tool to overcome cultural, religious, and other differences and bring benefits to teachers, students, and other members of society. When we talk about developing a school for all, we are still lacking. The hiring and promotion of professionals to be done in a transparent and fair manner, of new professionals receiving help to adapt to the school, that the school organizes classes in a way that gives all students the opportunity, among others. Organizing support for diversity also contributes to the establishment of inclusive policies. This implies giving a flexible time margin for students to study certain subjects, giving teachers greater freedom to choose their working methods, providing teachers with the opportunity to give special support in practical subjects, for example, orientation and mobility, in addition to the periods reserved for more traditional subjects, setting aside time for additional support for classroom work, and emphasizing the aspects linked to pre-vocational training. Many curricula want all students to learn the same things at the same time and using the same means and methods, but students are different and have different abilities and difficulties. Therefore, the curriculum should take into consideration the various needs of students in order to ensure success for all. Together with flexible curricula, flexible teaching learning methodologies should be adopted. Some strategies are: what human values are being developed across the curriculum promoting inclusion? Are human rights and children's rights part of the curriculum? Do they refer to the coexistence of rights and responsibilities? And how are they taught? Does the curriculum take into account children's gender, cultural identity, and mother tongue? Does the curriculum include environmental education? Are teaching methods child-centered and interactive? How are the results recorded or integrated into the curriculum review? How does the curriculum relate to national assessment systems? To what extent do education authorities take responsibility for checking that the school is in tune with curriculum reviews and negotiations? Finally, regarding the third dimension of EI, promote inclusive practices, it aims to ensure that all children can really learn, even those who are flagged as having specific needs. It is possible to bring what you teach closer to what you learn. In an inclusive perspective, if learning activities are designed to support the participation of all children, the need for individual support diminishes. This support is provided when teachers plan lessons with all children in mind, recognizing their different starting points, interests, experience, and approaches to learning, and is also administered when children help each other. Organizing learning means linking learning to experience and rights, locally and globally, children being encouraged to be active, reflective, critical learners, and are seen as a resource for each other's learning. Adults working together so that everyone takes responsibility for the learning of all children, and learning being orchestrated so that teaching and learning activities become responsive to the diversity of young people in school. Finally, mobilize resources. It involves reducing barriers to learning and participation. It creates a common direction for development, shapes decisions, and helps resolve conflicts. When values are made clear and shared by the school's communities, this becomes a great resource. Inclusive values are thus constant catalysts for increased participation in learning and in the wider life of the school. There are always more resources to support learning and participation than are actually used. There are some indicators that can reveal whether the education system of a particular school is on the right track to evolve towards inclusion. The Center for Studies on Inclusive Education has developed the already mentioned Index for Inclusive Schooling from 2003, which takes the social model of disability as its starting point. It builds on good practice and guides work around a cycle of activities which guide schools through phases of remediation, research, development, and evaluation. Let us now explore 4 enabling features of an inclusive ecosystem. These are instruments that should be considered in an integrated, articulated, and flexible way, constituting support guides for the action of schools in the operationalization of the diploma at community, school, and classroom level. Multilevel approach. This is a comprehensive model for action at school level, aimed at the success of each and every student through the organization of an integrated set of measures to support learning. This model of action has expected impacts on the different stakeholders in the different spaces and at different levels of organization and operation of the school. It is based on the principles presented here and, based on a collective vision and responsibility, it organizes support measures on various levels, which are ensured continuously. The school leadership is guided by the principles of inclusive education. There is a focus on the curriculum and its adaptation thanks to the collaborative work of the educational team. Teacher professional development is also continuous due to theoretically and empirically supported pedagogical practices. Systematic monitoring and self-evaluation processes are defined so that the cycle is continuously optimized. Universal design for learning, where we will linger a little longer. It is also a structuring and guiding model in the construction of learning environments and responds to the need to organize universal measures aimed at all students. This model is an essential tool in classroom planning and action. This is a curriculum approach based on intentional, proactive, and flexible planning of pedagogical practices, considering the diversity of learners in the classroom. It recognizes that the way each student learns is unique and singular. It offers opportunities for all learners in terms of methods, materials, tools, support, and forms of assessment. It implies a flexible and personalized approach by teachers in the way they involve and motivate students, in the way they present information, and in the way they evaluate. As we can see, it is based on 3 basic principles, which support a set of guidelines for making classrooms more accessible for all students. These are providing multiple means of engagement, providing multiple means of representation, and providing multiple means of action and expression. Let's get to know each of these principles better. Providing multiple means of engagement involves encouraging interest, supporting effort and persistence, and providing means of self-regulation. How can we encourage our students' interest? Providing options as to how each objective can be achieved, as well as tools, learning contexts, support, and time to finish the tasks. To allow for student participation in the planning of activities. Plan activities where products are authentic, communicate with a real audience with clear goals. Involve students in setting their learning and behavioral goals. Provide tasks that allow for active participation, exploration, and experimentation. Provide a climate of acceptance and support in the classroom. Use strategies to anticipate daily activities, routines, and action transitions, posters, calendars, timetables, visible stopwatches. Vary the level of sensory stimulation, the pace of work, the time, and the sequence of activities. Use prompts that can help students anticipate and prepare for new tasks. Also, to diversify activities and sources of information so that they can be personalized and contextualized according to the student's individual pathway, culturally relevant, socially meaningful, appropriate to the student's age and skills. Include activities that promote the use of imagination to solve new and relevant problems or make sense of complex ideas in creative ways. Supporting effort and persistence. How to do it? Provide periodic reminders reminding you of the targets to be achieved. Set short-term objectives that enable long-term goals to be achieved. Differentiate the degree of complexity and difficulty of tasks. Promote student involvement in discussion about assessment. Vary the degree of freedom to the level of performance deemed acceptable. Emphasize process, effort, and progress in meeting required content as an alternative to assessment and competition. Encouraging and supporting opportunities for peer interaction and mutual help. Use flexible working groups and cooperative learning with well-defined objectives, roles, and responsibilities. Creating communities of learners involved in common interest and activities. Make explicit the intended outcomes of the work done in groups, clear and explicit guidelines, standards, and evaluation criteria. Also, provide mastery-oriented feedback with a focus on effort and persistence rather than innate abilities. And providing formative rather than comparative feedback. And finally, with regard to the first principle of DUA, how can we support students' self-regulation in practice? Provide tutors who model the process of setting appropriate targets, considering strengths to be improved. To present instructions, reminders, and guides that allow the establishment of self-regulation objectives, the increase of time for task orientation in the face of distractions, the increase of the frequency of moments of self-reflection and self-reinforcement. Support initiatives that promote self-reflection and the identification of personal goals. To provide differentiated models, support and feedback for frustration management, the development of self-control and the promotion of challenge management skills, management of negative judgments focus on innate abilities. Use real-life situations to demonstrate skills in managing challenges and difficulties. Create opportunities to visualize progress that allow changes to be monitored over time. Moving on to the second principle, when we think about providing means of representation, we talk about how to improve perception, language, mathematical expressions and symbols, and understanding. How to improve students' perception. Presenting information in different sensory modalities, visual, auditory, tactile, or kinesthetic. Providing visual and non-visual alternatives for presenting information. Presenting information in adaptable formats, enlarge font size, amplify sound. Regarding language, mathematical expressions, and symbols, associate vocabulary with labels, icons, and symbols and forms of representation alternatives. Provide alternative representations that clarify or make more explicit syntactic or structural relations between the various elements of meaning. Examples: highlight connectors and phrases, indicate links between ideas in a concept map. Support the decoding of texts, mathematical notation, and symbols. Examples: using translation tools, incorporating visual aids for vocabulary clarification. Present alternatives such as illustrations, images, interactive graphics to make the information more understandable. And understanding, how can it be enhanced? anchoring instruction in prior and culturally relevant knowledge, use different ways of organizing information, and foster connections between the various curricular areas. To highlight patterns, critical points, key ideas, and connections through clues and support that enable learners to pay attention to essential rather than incidental information. Examples: schematic, concept maps, use multiple examples to emphasize relevant aspects. To provide explicit and supported situations for generalizing learning into new and practical situations. Guiding information processing, visualization, and manipulation. Examples: presenting information in a progressive and sequential manner, sectioning information into smaller elements, eliminating ancillary information. Principle 3 focuses on providing multiple means of action and expression, particularly with regard to physical activity, expression and communication, and executive functions. With regard to physical activity, we can provide alternatives to motor response skills, such as providing alternatives for using a pen and/or pencil, or, in the case of computer use, alternatives for controlling the mouse when necessary. To provide alternatives in terms of rhythm, speed, and extension of the motor action. Optimizing access to support tools and products, resources that make it easier to use the pencil or pen. Concerning means of expression and communication, use different media for communication. Examples: written language, oral language, drawing, music, visual arts, etc. Use social networks and interactive web tools, forums, chats, etc., which often meet the tastes and interests of students. The same happens when we use web applications, wikis, blogs, animation, and presentation. Use manipulative materials. Use tools for converting written material into spoken language and vice versa, spell checkers and grammar checkers, calculators. Make differentiated models available as a reference for students. Provide differentiated and personalized feedback. Provide multiple examples with innovative solutions to real problems. And finally, means to enhance executive function in learning. To provide support in setting challenging and realistic goals, considering the associated effort, resources, and degree of difficulty. Individual plans are a good way of doing this. Provide guides and checklists to support target setting. Integrate reminders to support planning and strategy development. Examples: stop and think before acting, show and explain work, think aloud. Provide support for the fragmentation of long-term objectives into achievable short-term goals. Providing checklists and templates for planning a project with a view to understanding the problem, setting priorities, sequencing, and timing of tasks. Provide explicit, specific, and timely feedback that supports self-regulation of learning. Examples: using reflection guiding questions, showing evidence of progress, using differentiated self and co-evaluation strategies. And so we end this part dedicated to the universal design for learning as a resource of an inclusive ecosystem. According to the Portuguese Directorate General for Education, the application in the classroom of the 3 principles listed contributes to the creation of accessible and challenging learning environments for all students and should, therefore, be considered in lesson planning. We now move on to the 3rd resource presented, the Learning Support Center, which consists of a support structure of the school aggregating human and material resources, knowledge, and competences of the school. It is important to clarify that this is not a physical structure in the school, but a logistical structure that contemplates in an integrated and articulate way individual and contextual dimensions, that is, dimensions of the student and the educational contexts. Aims to support the inclusion of children and young people in the group or class and in the school routines and activities, namely through the diversification of strategies to access the curriculum. To promote and support access to training, higher education, and integration into post-school life. It is therefore a bridge with the active life of the student with specific educational needs. To promote and support access to leisure, social participation, and independent living. In Portugal, this structure works in a logic of inclusion support services and is part of the continuum of educational responses provided by the school, One was created for each school cluster as part of the school autonomy framework in response to the decree law regulating inclusive education. It has 2 lines of action. 1. Support for the teachers responsible for the groups or classes, which, among other key aspects, includes the development of structured teaching methodologies and strategies. 2. Complementary to the work developed in the classroom or in other educational contexts. This usually has an associated multidisciplinary team. This multidisciplinary team can function as the core of an articulated system of networking between different partners, them being in the field of education or health. For example, the multidisciplinary team supporting inclusive education may request the collaboration of the school health team whenever necessary in order to build a participatory, integrated, and effective approach. It is a team of diverse composition: head teachers, space teachers, psychologists, therapists, operational assistants, and others. It is a specific organizational resource to support learning, which has as attributions and competences proposed support for their implementation and respective follow-up and monitoring, advising teachers on the implementation of inclusive teaching practices, follow-up to the Learning Support Center, and raising the awareness of the educational community. This team also has a crucial role in raising awareness of inclusive education by ensuring that the school adopts a strategic vision, mission, principles, and values oriented towards inclusion. They thus develop an enabling environment for inclusive practices through, for example, the dynamization of spaces for reflection and training involving the whole educational community, the identification of coherent and well-founded practices already developed by the school's pedagogical teams. We now turn to the last resource of an inclusive ecosystem, learning communities, which have the role of encouraging professional learning beyond training and empowering school staff for inclusive teaching, thus developing a professional vision for inclusion. Professional learning communities can sensitize teaching and non-teaching staff to the vices of schooling, that is, the structures and mechanisms established in the system that tend to reproduce inequalities. Form or integrate professional learning communities for inclusion include, for example, school working groups in addition to school staff, training of university teachers through postgraduate programs, parent-family associations, and other local community service providers. Involving all these parties has proven to be good practice, according to the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education. Sharing practices and skills and mapping team development for inclusion is part of the mission of these communities. The ultimate aim of this structure is to adopt an inclusive perspective for the whole school. For those who don't know, there is a project, European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education, the Teacher Professional Learning for Inclusion. This project proposes to explore key aspects of teacher education and how teachers can be effectively prepared to include all learners. The agency aims to include all its member countries in the project, exploring national policies on teacher professional learning for inclusion. Learn more about this project through the following video.
In an inclusive classroom, learners can grow alongside their friends and peers. The opportunity for everyone to work as a team and build lasting relationships is a cornerstone of an equitable educational environment. The European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education supports ministries of education as they put this ideal into practice. We provide a platform for collaboration, working with over 30 member countries to ensure high-quality educational opportunities for all learners. The agency fosters transnational cooperation with organisations like the European Commission and the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, as well as educators, experts, learners and their families. Together, we work towards inclusive education throughout Europe. To realise our vision, we have built a peer learning framework. We create ways for member countries to exchange knowledge, combining policy, practice and research perspectives. At the agency, we facilitate peer learning in a variety of ways. Country policy reviews provide snapshots of member countries' educational policy frameworks. Data collection offers insight into statistics such as enrolment rates. Thematic projects involve policymakers, researchers, school leaders, teachers, parents and learners, looking at topics such as financing policies for inclusive education systems. And finally, through the European Commission's Structural Reform Support Service, we address individual challenges identified by ministries of education relating to policy reforms and implementation. Through these activities, we produce evidence-based policy recommendations to inform and improve inclusive education systems. We also identify goals that schools and educators can work towards. And importantly, we encourage cohesion for a brighter future across Europe, because everyone benefits when we can share our strengths and learn from others.
Another reference project in the area of professional learning communities that we want to show is the Included project. In 2011, it was the only social science research project highlighted by the European Commission. It is coordinated by CREA at the University of Barcelona, whose mission is to identify successful actions that contribute to overcoming school failure and dropout, as well as overcoming the associated risk of exclusion in other areas such as employment, health, housing, and political participation. The Natura Institute in Spain has a distance learning course on learning communities. You can consult it on the link indicated, which corresponds to the Instituto Natura's website. Let's learn more about this project through a video of the Natura Institute.
Hola, ¿todo bien? Yo me llamo Magdalena Monteiro. Soy profesora y contadora de historias. En esta clase voy a presentar las bases científicas del aprendizaje dialógico, que viene de la investigación Included, un estudio coordinado por el CREA, Centro de Investigación en Teorías y Prácticas de Superación de Desigualdades Sociales de la Universidad de Barcelona, que identificó procesos educativos exitosos que contribuyen a superar el fracaso y la deserción escolar. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre los descubrimientos y resultados de esta investigación. Es importante que ustedes presten atención porque vamos a retomar este contenido en las demás clases de este curso. El Include-Ed fue implementado sobre metodologías comunicativas. Un abordaje donde la construcción de conocimiento se basa en el diálogo igualitario entre investigadores y la comunidad escolar. El resultado es construido a través de acuerdos, de forma que sea fruto de la plena interacción entre todos los participantes. En el origen del proyecto fueron reunidos estudiosos de 15 universidades e instituciones de investigación europeas, representantes de grupos vulnerables, profesores, educadores, familiares y formuladores de políticas en torno a dos objetivos principales. El primer objetivo se enfocaba en la educación y tuvo su representación en las actuaciones educativas exitosas, que son estrategias educativas que se orientan a la cohesión social y a la mejoría del aprendizaje de todos los estudiantes. El segundo objetivo del trabajo fue documentar formas de conectar las iniciativas educacionales a otras áreas de la sociedad como la vivienda, el empleo, la salud y la participación social en general. A partir de esas ideas, el Included se dedicó al estudio de 26 casos en escuelas localizadas en regiones de alta vulnerabilidad. Se verificó que aún en un grupo diverso de estudiantes, los resultados académicos eran alentadores comparados con otras escuelas en la misma situación. Según la investigación, eso fue posible gracias a actuaciones educativas exitosas que trajeron dos importantes descubrimientos. Agrupar a los estudiantes de la forma más heterogénea posible y reorganizar los recursos humanos para atender la diversidad contribuye con el rendimiento académico de ellos. Y la participación de familiares y de la comunidad impacta en la superación de la exclusión social, reconociendo que esa responsabilidad no se limita solo a la escuela. En los cursos de grupos interactivos y participación educativa de la comunidad, usted podrá saber más sobre esas contribuciones. Las actuaciones educativas exitosas identificadas por el Included en las escuelas pioneras del proyecto ya fueron aplicadas en otros contextos y obtuvieron excelentes resultados. Se comprobó entonces que son prácticas que, aplicadas a otros contextos, producen los mismos resultados, mejorando considerablemente el éxito académico y la convivencia entre todos. De ese modo, es posible utilizar perspectivas geográficas, culturales y sociales que son muchas veces usadas para legitimar desigualdades, como base para la implementación de políticas educacionales transformadoras. Las experiencias con esas acciones muestran cómo es equivocado el discurso que culpa a los estudiantes o al ambiente por el fracaso escolar, especialmente cuando se trata de minorías. Se descubrió que cuando esas acciones son implementadas en escuelas ubicadas en áreas desfavorecidas, con predominio de estudiantes en situación de mayor vulnerabilidad, los resultados mejoran. Queda claro en este escenario que lo crucial no es la composición del grupo de estudiantes, sino el tipo de acción educacional implementada. Me gustaría que, después de esta clase, reflexionaran sobre las condiciones actuales de enseñanza en la escuela de su barrio o de su comunidad. Lo que hay de positivo y de negativo en el medio actual. Cómo transformar en más humana y productiva la convivencia entre empleados de la escuela, profesores, familiares y comunidad en general. Su escuela puede tener más interacciones con los familiares y también entre los estudiantes, de modo que esto proporcione avances en el aprendizaje. Un paso que, si es dado en conjunto y de común acuerdo, puede traer muchos beneficios para todos. Gracias por la compañía y hasta la próxima clase.
Teachers, parents, communities, school authorities, curriculum advisors, teacher training colleges, and educational entrepreneurs are some of the actors who can act as valuable resources in supporting inclusion. We walk towards the last theme of this module, the strategic partnership, school, community, and family. As we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, teachers, parents, and communities are much more than a valuable resource. They are the key elements to support all aspects of the inclusion process. However, this symbiosis between school and society only rarely exists. It is therefore the mainstream school teacher who bears the greatest responsibility for the students and their learning on a daily basis. Whatever success a child is taught at school, the involvement of the family and in some cases the community is considered indispensable if we are to ensure that what a child learns at school is applied at home and elsewhere in daily life. For this partnership to effectively take place and last, it is essential to open up channels of expression, dialogue, negotiation, participation, decision-making, and monitoring of educational processes. I remind you that the function of EI is to lead the educational system, to create values and intervention models that lead the whole school community to appropriate instruments that allow everyone to participate and to feel a sense of belonging to different communities in effective conditions of equality. Don't give up on informing, stimulating, empowering, and effectively preparing your students' families. But if partnerships are so important, what needs to happen for partnerships to work? According to author Anne Turnbull, trust. How do you build trust with families? 1. Communication. Communicate openly and honestly with families in an environment that is comfortable for them. Try not to communicate with families only when you have bad news about the student. 2. Respect. Treat families with dignity and acceptance. Consider how you can create a respectful environment for families. Think about the content you present or the activities you carry out in the classroom. How can you structure them to honor and include students from different backgrounds, for example? Try to help families see students' unique strengths rather than just focusing on deficits. Also, with respect, try to acknowledge that families may experience many circumstances that you may not even know or understand. 3. Equality. To practice equality with families, try to recognize them as a member of the team working towards students' outcomes. Share power and work together. Value their opinions and recognize them as experts on your own child. It is important to value family as people who may have knowledge or ideas that can complement your own experience as an educator. 4. Competence. Make sure you are highly qualified in your field. Keep learning and growing and have high expectations. Be a lifelong learner. If there are specific skills you don't already have, try to get more training or approach experts who can help you. 5. Defense of rights. To practice advocacy with families, focus on reaching the best solution for the student. Sometimes the family can feel like they are alone in advocating for the student's best interest, and it is often a breath of fresh air for an educator or related professional to go the extra mile and voice their opinions about what is the best solution for students. 6. Commitment. Be available and consistent. To build a trusting partnership with families, you need to demonstrate that you are committed. The project Included has made a study on strategies for inclusion and social cohesion in Europe through education. The study includes an analysis of family and community participation. The main findings point to some measures that are more likely to achieve educational success and family participation, such as families and community members participate in the students' learning processes, in decision-making processes, in educational programs, in the monitoring and accountability of the school in relation to educational outcomes, in program and curriculum evaluation. Other authors, Booth and Einskow, have developed through their studies a checklist that allows for a reflection on the school's culture of involvement. We propose that in a self-analysis, you check whether you answer affirmatively to all the questions in this list. Are parents well informed about the school's policies and practices? Are parents aware of the priorities of the school's educational projects? Are parents given the opportunity to participate in decisions made about the school? Are the difficulties and fears that some parents have in contacting the school and meeting with teachers recognized and steps taken to overcome them? Are there different possibilities for parents to be involved in the work of the school? Are there diversified opportunities for parents to discuss progress and concerns about their children? Are the different contributions that parents can make to the school equally valued? Do teachers value the knowledge that parents have about their children? Do teachers encourage the involvement of all parents in their children's learning? And do parents feel that their concerns are really considered by the school? We conclude this module by stressing that, without any doubt, it is necessary to create a school that is a participatory learning community. Without creating communities available to effectively listen to the other, it will not be possible to rebuild the school for the 21st century. To conclude, we suggest you access the Index for Inclusion in your language on the link below. We will include it in this video synopsis and start to do at least one of the 2 challenges we propose. 1. Analyze the priorities for inclusion in your school. 2. Challenge yourself, choose one of the proposed activities and carry them out in your school. We hope that this module has been interesting for you and has given you not only hints, but concrete tools to work on inclusion in your school. We suggest that you consult the manual for a more in-depth study. We propose some additional resources that complement what we have already mentioned here. As well as taking notes on the key learnings you take away from this video, we welcome your feedback on the link provided in the summary of this video. We would like to end with another moment of motivation and mobilization for an inclusive school through one of our project videos. Thank you for your interest.
School is one of the places where we spend most of our time. It is where we meet new people, play, grow, and learn about the world around us. We can all learn, each in our own way. There are things we like to learn more and things we like to learn less. Sometimes we learn faster and sometimes slower. Learning is sometimes harder and sometimes easier. At school, we all learn together, but we are all different. And we can find solutions so that everyone learns as well as possible and is happier at school. Come on, come and find out how simple it is. Rita finds it hard to do arithmetic. The teacher asked her to do a subtraction and she couldn't do it. The teacher used oranges to represent subtraction, and Rita has now worked out that 5 minus 1 is 4. When Sophie spends break times alone, she feels very sad. When classmates include Sophie in their activities and games, she feels very happy and welcome. Carl is visually impaired and cannot read the signs to get to the library. Carl can read the signs, which are written in Braille and with relief, so now he knows which way to go to the library. James is autistic, and when the room is too noisy, he feels very uncomfortable. One of his classmates asks for less noise, and he feels much better with the quiet. Peter has trouble doing tests and worksheets when there are many different kinds of exercises on them. When tests and worksheets have only one type of exercise, Peter can concentrate and answer the questions. Louise is hearing impaired and cannot understand the teacher well when the teacher only explains the subject through words. When the teacher uses pictures, Louise understands much better. Maria is multi-disabled and is not able to do the exercises because she cannot use a pencil. When Maria uses the computer, instead of a pencil, she can solve the exercises the teacher wants her to do. When the classroom has tables in rows, Mary can't see the teacher well, and it's hard for her to understand the lesson. Mary can follow the lessons much better when the classroom layout allows all students to see the teacher well. Tanya has a learning disability, and sometimes the teacher gives her different activities from her classmates. Tanya doesn't feel comfortable when she is left apart from her classmates and is treated differently. When the teacher includes Tanya in the same activities as her classmates, she feels more confident and happier. Anna has poor eyesight and cannot read the board when the teacher writes small letters and numbers. When the teacher writes bigger letters and numbers, Anna can read the board. John communicates without speaking. When the teacher asks him what fruit he wants to eat, it's difficult for John to answer. When the teacher uses pictures to communicate with John, John can point to them to give the answer. She knows which fruit John prefers to eat. David is visually impaired and cannot play basketball in the same way as his peers. His schoolmates use a broom to show him where the basket is by making a sound. This enables David to play with them. Daisy has a motor disability and feels excluded when she is not allowed to participate in the same activities as her classmates because she uses a walker. When Daisy participates in school activities and field trips, she feels happy and included. Daniel is hearing impaired and cannot understand the teacher when he only communicates orally. When the teacher uses American Sign Language to communicate, Daniel can follow the lesson much better. When the teacher scolds John for throwing a tantrum, he gets even more nervous and agitated. The teacher gives John time and space to calm down by himself, and he feels much better. It is very difficult for Paul to answer questions about a text when the questions are on one side of the sheet and the text is on the other side. If the text and questions are on different sheets, side by side, Paul can read both sheets and concentrate more easily. John has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It is difficult for him to keep his desk tidy, and the teacher gets angry when he has his materials all messed up. When the teacher helps him tidy up his desk, he feels much more comfortable and can concentrate better during lessons. Victor has trouble sitting still, and while he is listening to the teacher, he knocks his pencil and his hand on the table, which sometimes upsets the teacher and classmates. The teacher suggests that Victor scribbles in his notebook while he is talking. He feels more focused, and so do his classmates and teacher. And you? Do you have any other ideas? What can we do to make everyone happier at school?